In this video, I'm going to discuss the issue of influencing skills, in particular how we can use those skills to better achieve the outcomes and objectives that we desire. I'm going to summarise 6 key drivers of influence that I use when I'm working with clients, all drawn on the research of the world's leading expert in the area, Dr. Robert Cialdini in the United States. I'm also going to produce 6 other videos focusing on each driver, because I believe the ability to influence more effectively is so important. So if you're interested in learning more, I would encourage you to watch those videos when you have some time. The ability to influence more effectively is especially important in professional services. You can speak to anyone who's experienced in the area. They'll confirm that you can have the best office, you can have the best marketing or sales plan, the best strategy, even the best technical experts. But if your key people aren't aware of or cannot influence others effectively, they're always going to be unable to compete as effectively against organisations or individuals that can. It's also extremely important for those working within corporations that seek to influence internal stakeholders. I'm speaking very much here about internal legal teams, in-house legal teams, who have been called more and more to demonstrate their value and effectiveness within the organisation. Teams that I've worked on with influencing skills find ways, innovative ways actually, to increase their influence and engagement within corporations, which is gives them a bit of an edge within, makes them more relevant and valuable to the organisation as a whole. I suppose the key point to make for those of you who are interested is that you have no choice about whether you seek to influence other people, groups or decisions. It's hardwired into human beings to do so. We all, in business and in our personal lives, seek to influence others in order to achieve outcomes and objectives that we want. The choice you have is how you go about it. I tend to find there are 2 categories. There's the people who don't really spend much time thinking about influencing. They either influence the best they can subconsciously or in a very much an unplanned way. And then there is the groups that actually spend time to understand the key drivers of influence and use them in their day-to-day work, either as part of a detailed plan or with more effectiveness than competing organisations or individuals that don't. So you have no choice in the matter, but you do have a choice in how you go about it. And I would argue that those that do go about it always have a much more competitive edge than those that don't or who don't. What are the 6 key drivers then that I promised to summarise? The first one is called reciprocity. What does that mean? Well, it's the idea that we tend to pay back as human beings what we receive. And you would know this from your own lives. If someone gives something of value to you, it doesn't have to be financially valuable, but it's something that you value, it's almost certain that you will, at one time in the future, reciprocate and provide them with something of value. This is a very powerful driver of influence when it comes to developing client relationships. A second driver of influence that Cialdini identified in his work is called commitment and consistency. So this is the idea that human beings will tend to stick with the choices or commitments they have made, in particularly if they've made them publicly. Therefore, if we can encourage people to commit to an idea or an action, especially publicly, we're more likely to be able to influence their behaviour than those that don't seek to do so. A third key driver of influence, which I find really interesting, especially in the age of social media, is called social proof. What does that mean? Well, colloquially you could say we tend to follow the herd. But it's the idea that human beings will tend, especially in uncertain or ambiguous or controversial contexts, will tend to gravitate towards people that they trust. The people they trust and the ideas they have become an area or a magnet, if you will, or a vector that you can go to. We see this all the time, for instance, on Facebook, where groups of people will tend to go to other groups, or an individual will tend to go to a group that he or she trusts, especially in those situations where things are controversial or ambiguous. In the business sector, I'll just give you an example from Cialdini's work. You've all been to hotels where you find a little card in the bathroom these days saying, could you please reuse the towels? Now, you'll normally have some explanation as to why. For instance, it's good for the environment, is the classic one. Cialdini did a really interesting experiment where he had one hotel with essentially that card, please reuse the towel, it's good for the environment, but another hotel who had a card saying 75% of our customers reuse the towels. It's also good for the environment. Well, it probably doesn't surprise you that in the second category, the reuse of towels went up dramatically. Why? Because we tend to do what other people do. That's the principle of social proof, which is a key driver of influence. A fourth driver of influence, there are 6, is simply called liking. Now, of course, human beings tend to be influenced by other people who they like. But the key thing from a professional point of view is working out the traits that, say, your clients use when they are determining likability. Now, why is this interesting? Well, one of the key traits that has become far more pronounced in recent times, and in my opinion it's all about, once again, social media. We're becoming far more attuned to fake information, anything inauthentic. Okay? So one of the key traits that's coming through is the ability of someone to be authentic. Being authentic or genuine is a trait that people are using more and more these days to determine likability. Why is this important? Well, let's say you have someone who's an introvert, not particularly good or comfortable, for example, with making speeches. Okay? 10 years ago, that person might struggle to influence, say, a client, compared to someone who is confident, likeable, social, extroverted and the like. These days it's a bit different. An introverted person who is considered authentic and genuine is as, if not more influential than another person who is not considered as authentic but may be more social, for example. So you can see how it becomes complicated, but that's the key job that professionals in organisations who are good at this do very well. They understand what it is their clients use when they're determining likability, and then they can influence them more effectively. So we've been through reciprocity, commitment and consistency, social proof, liking. What are the other 2 drivers of influence? Well, the 5th one is called authority. So again, this is really interesting in the modern professional services space. The principle is straightforward. We tend to be influenced by those who either exude authority that we believe in or who know what they're doing, for example. Okay. What's different these days, though? Well, as any of you with children will know, the world is becoming more visual. We tend, and certainly younger generations, will tend to consume and evaluate information from what they see in a video, for example, far more than, say, my generation, which has been trained really to look at text. Let me give you an example of how that might work in the professional services space. Well, if you go to any website of a professional services organisation, you'll have a photo, which is great, of a professional, their position, a PDF of their qualifications and experience. You'll know straight away what their qualifications are, maybe their experience and the like. And that, of course, does give a statement about their level of authority and credibility. I found that organisations that marry that with a video of the person, once again, remember what we were talking about before about authenticity, a video of the person, are far better able to influence whoever is looking at the video and at the text than organisations that simply stick to text. So that's an idea or an example of how we influence people using the authority driver in innovative ways. The last principle or driver of influence that Cialdini identified is called scarcity. What does that mean? Well, we tend as human beings to be curious and to desire things that we want that are scarce. If something is scarce or is made scarce, for instance, you provide clients with limited access to things that they value, or you make access to information, people, whatever it is you seek, less simple, or you cut off access, you make it more exclusive. You are often able to influence those people more than organisations that do not work effectively on this scarcity driver. You have to be careful in this area, especially if you are making things scarce that competing organisations are not. Unless you have a degree of, I suppose, expertise, that means that you're cutting off that information to interested parties, makes it more valuable, then you have to be very careful about using scarcity as a driver of influence. But I'm sure you can see that taken together, reciprocity, commitment and consistency, social proof, liking, authority and scarcity, organisations or individuals that consciously use these drivers to influence outcomes or people or groups, often using a detailed plan and innovative ideas, have a huge advantage, especially in the professional services sector, than organisations that do not. Anyway, I hope you found that interesting. If you have more interest, please feel free to look at the other videos, and I hope to hear from you soon about it. Thank you.